Hi, everyone. Stephanie McPhail has a double master's degree in health and education, a bachelor's degree in psychology. She's a certified crisis counselor, certified coach, Reiki practitioner, a toxic relationship recovery expert who specializes in helping professional women discover who they are after a toxic divorce or breakup so they can rebuild their lives to be happy, whether single or in a relationship. You can download her guide at beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com/thrive-guide. Thanks so much.
I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried. Will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Stephanie McPhail, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm so excited to be able to share what I've learned in my experience with your listeners.
Yeah, I am too. And how we met, listeners, is Stephanie emailed me asking if I would come on her podcast. Stephanie, your podcast
is Toxic Love Transformation.
So listeners, you know that why would I ever say no to a podcast with that title? Like, that's so easy. It's like asking me to talk about food. Of course I'll do it. I mean, my God, I don't do that many anymore because I don't seek them out. But if someone asks me, I'm like, sure, why not? I certainly know what I'm talking about.
And I thought, why not? I listened to your podcast and I was like, she's so knowledgeable. I would love to have her on and share what she's learned with her experience. And, I think it's just so inspiring to be able to have people hear how bad things can be and how much better it can get. It's just, and I appreciate you being able to share that with everyone.
Yeah, it's not easy. It certainly comes with critique. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you about this first, and then we'll get into other things. But, you've been doing this as long as I have in terms of podcasting. So you've seen, and you've been in the, narcissistic abuse community peripherally too. And I found that community very toxic. Unfortunately, and then pulled out of it. And now I'm on the periphery of it and it's great. But when I was really in it, it was like, it was not comfortable. But that's just my, my experience and some of my colleagues. How about you?
Okay. So I will say possibly an unpopular opinion, but I specifically don't focus on narcissism when I speak.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to say toxic relationships.
Yeah.
It seems like there's been this pull, and like when we started 10 years ago or whatever it was, people didn't really talk about narcissism. They just talked about codependency.
Right.
And then recently, hashtag narcissistic abuse, whatever, all that stuff is just trending everywhere. It's like the number one most searched word. Yep. But I think that people are using that instead of having someone be, or saying that someone's abusive, or saying that they just don't work together. I mean, sometimes I think saying someone's a narcissist takes away sometimes responsibility of our own behavior, because not everybody in the world is a narcissist. Some of us, most of us, have some narcissistic qualities.
Thank you. Yes.
Real. But I mean, not everyone in the world is a narcissist. So I think looking at so I agree with you in that I have noticed that when people start screaming narcissism, there's a lot of research and information that they're looking for, not as much taking responsibility. And therefore people get stuck not healing because it's all being blamed on the other person for the relationship going badly. When if you've not had just one bad relationship, but several, I mean, it's a really good idea to look at what we're doing that we keep falling into these patterns with people.
Oh my God, write that down. Preach, 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 preach. So true. And, I've said that, but because I'm not a therapist, I got blasted for saying that. Well, you're not even qualified to say anything. And I thought, okay, whatever. Here's where I'm qualified. Yeah. I've been in them.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You learn that the school of hard knocks teaches you a lot of information that you didn't necessarily want to know. And I mean, I was there too. I did the research. I learned all about narcissism and sociopaths and, psychopaths, all of those things. I did all the research, but none of that helped me to get better.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you. I think it keeps people, like you said, locked in. I mean, I have had people that, man, there's nothing like bad news or trashing people that will get you lots of followers.
Yes.
And I mean, just trying to speak to someone that has, 170,000 followers on Instagram and me thinking naively at the time, years ago, oh, this will be a great person to have on. And then realizing, oh my gosh, this is a very stuck person and none of what they're doing is getting them unstuck. And it's because of this focus on the other person in their life.
Yep. Yep.
And people forget too, I call it flea and tick syndrome. It's probably been said by many other people. But when you are in that kind of a relationship, most of the time your worst parts of yourself are being teased out by the other person. And so you're not behaving that well either, hence the fleas and ticks. And it takes you a while when you're out of that kind of a relationship for those things to fall off your body and for you to get back to yourself. But if you don't examine, well, I behaved these ways too, then you're missing the gifts of the journey.
100%. I mean, I was in an abusive relationship, but there were times where I was also abusive, as reactionary abuse.
Right.
There were times that I was beyond any place I could ever imagine being. But, when you're feeling like you're stuck in a corner, like a caged animal is going to attack. I mean, at some point when you're feeling unsafe and scared and you keep getting attacked, sometimes you just lose it. And I mean, there were 2 or 3 times where I went to a place where I was embarrassed of my behavior, but then he was able to use that against me and see, look, you're just as messed up as I am. See, you can push my buttons and look what happens. I pushed your buttons. Look, you did the same thing as I did. And I was like, oh my God, maybe he's right. Yeah. Maybe that is true. But the reality was more of, I was in a bad relationship that I shouldn't have been staying in, because if someone gets you to that point where you start acting in ways that are so beyond you, that's not a good place to be. Remove yourself from that. But I was just listening to what he was saying and, oh my gosh, he's right. Those empathetic people, I wanted to understand what he was talking about. And instead of saying, hey, this isn't good, I'm going to remove myself, I was, oh, this isn't good, let me be more understanding of his behavior and what's going on with him.
Right. Because, it all comes back to, it's toxic when everything is about the other person.
Yeah.
Everything. And I'm doing a show on Thursday, I think, with Dr. Mary Jones. She's a pediatrician. She's a new podcaster on the network. And we're going to talk about the horrifying experiences she has had as a Black woman dealing with white women. And there's a whole lot of toxicity, that she's dealt with and that she's going to talk about. And so I've been doing a lot of research on my own of just TikTok videos of different prominent speakers and reading and articles and so on. And I realized, oh my God, I have done a lot of the things that these people are just the micro things that you don't realize you're saying something that is so whatever. And nothing outwardly mean, just little behaviors, that we have, thank goodness, social media now where people can go, we don't really like it when you talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real interesting to sit and take responsibility and take stock of, oh, okay, maybe I need to change.
Not to go down this rabbit hole, but so I'm part of a banned book club. And so yeah, it's fun. And, so I think we constantly have that in the forefront of our minds. And I was actually, my son is part of a big choir, children's choir. And there was a woman that I am helping her. I'm new to this. And she's a woman of color. And in the first 2 or 3 weeks, there were parents that came to ask questions about where to park or what to do or whatever. Every single one of them looked at me and asked me as if I was in charge. It was my first few weeks of doing it. I had never done it. And there was this woman who had been there for years, but the default was choose me, and you can't see me, but I'm blonde, light skin, it was like, right. And I remember sitting there thinking every time someone would come to me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing how real this is.
Yes.
And I was thinking about her, what is she thinking? What is she feeling that this is just the default, is to ask me instead of her?
Yeah, it's real interesting to sit in those spaces. But I got to tell you, it makes me feel good to chew on, probably because, as I said before we got started, I've been in and out of therapy since I was 12. So I was trained from a young age to examine my own behavior. So I've been enjoying it, even though it stings. And I'm like, oh God, really? I've done that. It's like, okay, I have knowledge and now I can move past it. And I think what's so helpful about what you're doing is you address those things in such a kind way too. I've listened to some of your shows and I'm like, you don't shame people, which is really nice.
And I think that's important. I think so, really working with, I was that woman that I was successful in all the areas of my life, except for when it came to relationships. And I was the caretaker and I was the people pleaser and I was the oldest of the family. So I just always wanted to make sure everybody was happy and take care of everybody. And, because of that, I had awful boundaries. Well, let's say none for a long time. And, my first husband, I saw a bunch of red flags. I ignored them because I wanted to have a family. I felt like I was getting older. I was 28 PS. But at that point, 28, you're like, oh my God, I'm almost 30 and I'm getting old. All of that is not real. It didn't really matter. But in my mind, talk about analyzing yourself. In my mind at that time, it was such a big deal. And I had never found anyone great up until that point. And so this was what seemed like the best choice. All relationships were hard in my mind. And you have to pick the person that you think is going to be the best fit for you. Not like this is amazing, but this is the best it can be. I mean, that's really, I was settling. I really was. And so I ignored all the red flags. And then we got married at Oheka Castle in Long Island, New York. It's a beautiful location. It's literally a castle. And I had family from all over. And that night of our wedding, I went to go put my foot in the tub that he had filled, and water spilled out onto this beautiful marbled floor. And he started yelling and cursing at me for ruining the room. Oh. And I said, sweetheart, please don't let a good day go bad. Just stop. Well, he proceeded to curse at me, threaten me, tell me it was the worst mistake he had ever made. I'm naked, running around the suite, trying to close myself behind doors to be safe. He's threatening my life. I mean, all these terrible things until and I can't go anywhere because I'm naked. I'm embarrassed to run out the door. And he ends up throwing me onto the 4-post bed and starts strangling me until I nearly lose consciousness.
Oh my God.
And I stayed. I stayed for 5 years. So, and in those 5 years of me trying to make this work, because once you get married, you stay married, and he promised it would never happen again. And every time I'd throw him out and he'd come back, and, all of those things that I had in my mind, I understand why people feel so stuck.
Yeah.
There's your beliefs about things, and then there's the reality, and then there's the trainings that you have from your family, from, media, from all these different things.
Yes.
And you don't want to let anybody down.
Yeah. And it's interesting how long we live a life of what things outside of us have told us how we should be.
Yeah.
It's amazing how long we'll do that. And then when we start to wake up and we accept, if you're a total weirdo, I know I am in a good way, the more I accept that, the happier I am and the more calm and peaceful my life is.
Yes.
And when I look back on it, yes, there are lots of things that happened that led me to the choices I made, but I'm looking at, man, all those movies, all the things in the media, everybody else responding to that. You're on a path that is being dictated to you by things totally outside of yourself.
Yeah. And I find and so many of my clients, when they come to me, that's where they get stuck, is of what they think they're supposed to do.
Yes.
And that's a heavy burden to carry. And I agree with you. I think, I always say, let your weirdo flag fly.
Right.
You're attracting the people that are going to be the best fit for you if you are authentically yourself. If you are trying to bend and be a chameleon to everybody else, why are we surprised that we're not finding the right fit for us?
Right, exactly. And for some people, they want to be on their own. You don't have to be coupled to be a real valid person.
100%. And that's another thing too, is that feeling of, and I think especially for women, you have to get married. If you're not married by this time, there's something wrong with you, but there's not those same things on men.
Right. Exactly. The lovable bachelor forever.
Yeah.
Well, we don't get the lovable bachelorette forever.
Yeah, there's all sorts of mean things for women getting older, but and that was part of my healing, was to really get comfortable saying and thinking, I don't actually ever have to get married again. I don't have to be in a relationship. In fact, I kind of mourned the possibility, because I did want to have children. I wanted those things, but I had to stop being needy, and I had to start being, comfortable in who I was and create that life just for me. And in doing so, I ended up attracting my amazing husband, and I now have 2 beautiful children, and I get to have all that experience, but I wasn't in the place of need. I was in the place of, I already have an amazing, abundant life.
Right.
And I would like to have the extra as like the icing on top, but I didn't need it anymore. Well, before, when I was ending up with these unhealthy people, it was from this place of, oh my gosh, if I don't find somebody, there's something wrong with me.
Yes. And that is part of what is installed. That is programming that gets installed by a lot of things, but really gets driven home by the toxic partner, because they don't want you to leave. They don't want your light to shine, because if it does shine on you, you're going to look at that other person that's behaving so horrifically and go, I think I'm going to stay in the light.
Yeah. It was funny too, because I was an independent professional woman, and, and then when I got married, even after he was like, oh, I'll never do it again. But there was also this expectation from him that I wouldn't come home and go to the gym like I had done for like most of my adult life. Instead of that, I would come home from work and have dinner on the table for when he came home from work. It was like, wait, why would I suddenly change who I am because we're married? And so, even that, he loved in the beginning that I was a successful person. But then I think with my light shining and my ability to do great things made him feel small. He made himself feel small. I'll be more specific.
Right.
And instead of him trying to level up to where I was, it was easier for him to try to bring me down to where he was.
Yeah. And I've seen that happen, just I had a front row seat to my own relationships like that, and I had a front row seat to my mom going through that later after having a wonderful, successful, amazing marriage, really. I mean, they had their codependency, but I call it functional codependency. I mean, just a love story. And then out of that grief, getting involved with a terrifying person and watching the whole, it's very weird. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not sitting and talking to patients and getting that front row seat to an abusive relationship. So it was odd for me to like watch the whole thing play out and see what happened, and then have all this knowledge about those kinds of relationships. That was a trip and a half.
You'd be surprised how many people come to me after the death of a spouse that they had a great relationship with and then end up in really awful relationships.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. It seems to be that a lot of it is feeling like there'll never be anyone as good as the other one.
Right.
A little bit sometimes too much trusting of the other one because they were used to being able to trust their spouse. They're used to being coupled. So they started a relationship with someone else with this underlying assumption that those key values that they were used to experience are now in this new person when that's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. I can see that. Yeah. I remember sitting with my mom at a dinner table and this person telling her in front of me that her whole relationship with my stepfather was not real. She wasn't being her true self in that relationship.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, how dare you say this at our dinner table in front of me? This man adopted me at 38. I became his daughter, and he was wonderful. You don't even deserve to breathe the same air. I mean, of course, that's a mean thing to say, but this is what I was thinking. And
yeah.
And then lay this on my sweet mom who's in horrible grief. And then, of course, it brought out the worst in my mom too, which we're out of that. But it was tough. It's tough. So thank you for telling me that you've seen a lot of people come in after a grief with a happy marriage.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, and also, I mean, I see a lot of people where it's not always childhood trauma that ends people up in these kinds of unhealthy relationships either. I mean, sometimes
talk about that, because people always assume that, and I don't think
they don't think the other way. So, I just actually was speaking with another podcast host, and she was saying she grew up in a family where parents got along really well. And she's not the only one that I've spoken to about this, but where she was in her parents were strict. So she didn't really get out much. She didn't really date much when she was younger, but her parents were very they were authentic. If they said it, they did it. She could rely on them. And so she had this idea of what relationships were. And the same kind of thing, because she was a bit naive and too trusting, because she had never experienced anything other than that realistically, when she started dating and things were going wrong, it was automatically, well, what am I doing wrong? Because men in her mind were these great guys that she could trust, that she was safe with. So she didn't know how to properly protect herself and end things when they weren't going well.
So how do you work with your kids? Because there's a thing about, you don't want to, I always felt, and I'm not saying this was a healthy way to do it, but I always felt like I didn't want to share a lot of what I had been through with my son. It just felt like I was chewing on acid to even say some of the things that I went through, for whatever reason. But I am glad that I did, because it has certainly helped him in being very aware and being on the lookout for what's unhealthy. So how have you handled that with your kids?
Well, it's interesting. So I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my office is kind of centered, and there's glass doors. And so especially now I'm recording, kids aren't here, but the doors are open because it just sounds better. The glass, is not very good for sound. So when I'm doing interviews, I don't realize what other people can hear because I'm just in my little space. And probably like a month ago, both of my children, my son and my daughter, were both repeating my story. It's like, oh my gosh, they've heard me, because I've done enough interviews where I've shared my story and they have heard it. And so they know that mommy and daddy help people heal from toxic relationships. I mean, they can say it. They know. My son talks about, mommy was naked running around trying to save herself from her first husband. He was a bad guy.
No.
Yeah, that's great. And so I don't know. I think that with my kids, I try to be, they heard just from overhearing. I don't know if I would have specifically chosen to tell them the stories, but I do feel that being really open and honest and answering questions at their level, whatever those questions are, to be able to answer them, honestly, I think is really important. And so, we talk about things where, like, even the other day where he was getting upset with his sister and he went to be more aggressive. And I said, well, we don't do that. Mommy's not okay with, and daddy's not okay with you getting aggressive or putting your hands on your sister. It's never okay for a man to do that. And Sophie, my daughter, you're not allowed to do that to your brother either. It's not okay. And so, those kinds of opportunities, or like something as silly as my son, in our house, my husband is the one who does like the toilet cleaning. And my son says something to the effect of, oh, the toilet's dirty, daddy has to clean it. And I was like, well, you want to be like daddy, you better ask daddy to teach you how to clean the toilet. And he's like, yeah, if I'm going to be a good husband someday, I need to learn how to clean the toilet. I'm like, yeah, this is, we got to teach.
Thank you for raising a young male.
Exactly.
Think that. Yeah.
He knows you help. This is all part of the team. So, I think all of those kinds of conversations and talking about, even talking about the giving tree and talking about how the over giving is not really loving, or, the different movies that come up, and talking about, I like Beauty and the Beast. We just watched that. And we talked about how the Beast was actually super aggressive towards Belle. And, that's not really romantic. And so these, all these kinds of conversations are just, they're in the moment, but I see things so differently that I do this, that I want to make sure I'm having those conversations with them now, so they're not oblivious to it.
I know we don't think about the messages, like I remember being a little kid and I was always in my head playing a movie of what I wanted my life to be, or just was always playing a movie because it was an escape from what was really going on. Mm-hmm. But I remember, oh, I want some man to come in my room at night and wake me from my sleep, like Sleeping Beauty. And then when I got into my 40s, I went, that's called a stalker.
Yes, exactly.
And that's not romantic.
I'm sleeping. Don't kiss me while I'm sleeping. That's weird. I don't even know you.
Yeah. And like showing up at your house and jumping over a wall and, playing music in your front yard and yelling at you, up from the balcony and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's, if someone has done that and you're a wonderful, non-toxic person, good for you that it worked. But in the rest of society and the way I see that we're going, those behaviors are what we call the police about,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, that was one of the parts of my healing, is that, after I ended this toxic relationship, I was probably, like a lot of people listening, thinking I could do it all myself and figure it out, which yes, we can't. We really do need someone else to help us, whether it's myself, the therapist, another coach, like somebody to help see the areas that we're missing. But it was in the moment where I was in the hospital, in the emergency room with a sprained ankle, after months of things just going wrong. Like the universe was trying to tell me, like, Steph, look at what's going on. And I was like, la, 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 I'm not listening. and ended up in the emergency room. And my school called my ex-husband. So in the emergency room, we have to picture this. My ankle is all swollen. I have a doctor there and my ex-husband standing there. Of course, in my mind, like, I didn't want him to be there. Right. And all of a sudden, when the doctor says you have a severely sprained ankle, you have to stay off your ankle for the next 6 weeks or whatever. And I heard this very specific voice that said to me, you have to be your own knight in shining armor and stop waiting for someone to come and save you. You have to save yourself. And I heard that phrase as clear as day. And I realized in that moment that I had been waiting for someone to come and help me get out of the relationship with my ex-husband. I was wanting someone else to come and fix it for me.
Right.
And I realized I had to stop doing that because no one was going to come and save me. That didn't mean do what I had been doing because that wasn't working. It meant make it so that you never do this again. And so I created my team. I changed even my friendships. I mean, my whole life changed in that moment. I made a conscious decision to heal and not follow the waiting for someone to come and save the day idea that we hear all the time.
I know it puts, and I say this after going through a period here of being very angry at men. And, rightfully so.
Yeah.
However, and not taking it out on men, just keeping it to myself. I need to work through this. And now I'm out of it and out of that period of anger, which is really interesting. I learned a lot. And really going, okay, the pressure, it isn't easy for them either. The pressure to be the knight in shining armor, which is just, it's not sustainable.
No.
And it's not healthy.
No, it's not realistic.
But that's what they're told to be.
Yes, it is. And it takes away our own power.
Yeah. It really does. It really does. It's so one-dimensional.
Yeah. And again, if we realize that no one else is coming to save us, I mean, and I'll take a step back. Us trying to save everybody else doesn't work.
No.
So this interesting shift in ideas of like, well, wait a minute. I want someone else to come and save me, but I realize that me trying to save everybody else doesn't work. So I'm going to be waiting for a really long time to just be damsel in distress, waiting for someone to come and fix me. We know how hard it is to actually do the work when we want to, let alone when we don't want to.
Yeah, it's really empowering, even if you're, even when you are examining things about yourself that are really not pretty. Those are gems. I mean, I said this to my closest friend the other day. I said, it's kind of funny when I sit back. She was helping me do this research for that upcoming show I'm doing, which I've done before with other women, but it's time again to do that kind of a show. But I was thinking, I can look back at my behaviors at younger years and do it with, yes, there's a little bit of a cringe, but there's not shame.
Yeah.
There's no more shame. I treat myself like I would treat my girlfriend who comes to me and, said I did something awful. I'm just like, well, yeah, Kristin, that was not a good look, whatever it is. And I said to my friend, that's really nice because I never had talked and thought of myself. I've never treated myself as my beloved friend ever in my life until now. And it's really lovely.
It is. And that's actually one of the reasons why after we end these types of toxic relationships, we feel so lost because very often we've been so wrapped up in the other person and what their problems are and focusing all on them that we haven't had an opportunity to focus on ourselves. So then all of a sudden we're forced to, and one of two things normally happens. Either one, we jump as quickly as we possibly can into another relationship to avoid feeling all of those really big feelings.
Right.
And guess what? Hint, hint, it doesn't tend to work out well that way. Or we take that time and say, oh, this hurts. This is uncomfortable, but we lean into it. We get to know who we really are because part of that discomfort is we feel like we're with a stranger. So we get to know who that person is, get to know who we really are. And then we come back into the world a completely changed person. And again, whether we end up with someone or not, we're not coming from this neediness, scarcity, fear place. We're coming from this strong, empowered, positive place.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think, I want to come from my
Yes.
overflow of healthy things.
Yes.
Yes, I take care of myself. And yes, I'm in a caretaking situation that I could be doing something else. I chose this, it's a family member and I choose this and I'm very content and happy with that choice. Like I said, you always have a choice to
Mhm.
do something else. And I could have chosen to say, okay, I'm going to live down the street or I'm going to come visit when you're feeling down. And I chose not to do that. And that's totally okay too. Like there's nothing wrong with our ability that we developed in unhealthy relationships. You forget, you do have a lot of tools, a
Yeah.
lot of really good tools on how to caretake other people. When you come at it after spending a good amount of time putting those tools to work on yourself, it makes the caretaker journey that much richer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, and I think, but in a situation even like that it's not like I'm going to take care of you whether you like it or not.
No.
I'm going to fix you. It's, hey, I have this opportunity to be help and support for you as you're going through this difficult time. It's more of a mutually, it's a mutual understanding between two people, and I'm sure appreciation, where again, when we are overly caretaking someone that doesn't want to be, or
Right.
that's taking advantage of it, it's a different power dynamic.
Absolutely. And knowing as you move about these kinds of relationships that, yeah, that person's taking care of you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being you can be in a healthy mutual caretaking relationship, and have that. To me, it just speaks to how vital it is. And like we talked about on the show I did with you, these toxic relationships have so much incredible source material for you to take with you, to help you, to learn, to grow. And if you spend all your time focused on what a bastard or whatever this other person is, you're missing all those great things that you can learn about your own self that you then take into other friendships or relationships with yourself, all kinds of things. And if you don't take the time to examine you, you're just going to keep repeating that pattern. You're not, it's like, let's send you a worse one because maybe you'll get it this time. Because
100%.
tends to be what happens.
It is. It is. And, I'll say too that some of the best lessons that I've had have been from some of the worst things.
Yeah.
And even, those relationships. So, relationships for me, relationships growing up, my family, my parents, my mom, that relationship, people would assume knowing me, like, oh, you must have had such a caring, loving mom. And I did, but she also has a lot of other issues going on where there is a lot of this selfishness and some qualities that are not the healthiest, mental health issues. And I learned to be more understanding and empathetic of others because of her being the way she is, not despite of, it's because of. And my ability to help others heal from these relationships is because of the experience. I wouldn't be here had I not had that experience. So I am eternally grateful for all of the huge, level of different experiences of human experience that I've had, because it's gotten me to here. Do I want to relive those? Heck no. But but I'm not living there saying, oh my gosh, well, this person didn't treat me well and that person didn't do right by me. Like, no, it was difficult. I learned a lot about myself and what I wanted and what was okay. And I also learned how to be a better person towards others as well in the process, and how to help those that would like the help to heal.
I know. I wanted to get your reaction to this. I had someone come to me a few years ago that's really heavy into the narcissistic abuse stuff, which I've seen people over the years that there are a few gems that they're in it and they help so many people, and they don't go the other way. They're literally just amazing, amazing people. And that's their focus. but I've seen so many others get stuck in that loop, like we've been talking about. And one of the things that they said to me was, well, I'm going to create a dating app and give it to all my listeners. And I said, that is about the worst. That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my entire life.
It really is. It is. That was, I mean, I had a Facebook group before I changed the name. Oh, actually, no, even after I changed the name, but we used to allow men and women into the group because I have a soft spot in my heart for men, because I know men are going through this as well. It's not just women.
Absolutely.
But there was this horrible thing that was going on. And my husband, David, is like, I'm not letting any more men in. And the reason why is because the men that were coming in, even though they were answering the questions correctly, it was like a feeding frenzy of, ooh, there's all these emotionally hurt women that are easy prey for me to try to date. And so there was all of these like messages going on. And like my husband kept saying, he's like, it's like an 8th grade dance. Because then all of a sudden women were like showing like cute pictures of themselves and whatever. And we're like, this is not the point of this. This is not a dating group. This is not a friend group.
I know there was one guy, I don't know if he's still doing, not a therapist, and just had that. He would call me and say, oh, they send me their underwear. And he's just got all up in himself over this because he talked about this kind of abuse. And I was like, dude, you are a part of the problem.
Yeah.
You may have come at this with the right idea, but it's not going well. Like, just stop.
No, if women are, that's not cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Not healing.
Exactly. So tell me, what made you want to be a therapist? I always ask that with someone who decides to go in this profession, because I love people that decide to do this. So tell me how your journey came.
Well, I mean, so I have a degree in psychology, but I am not a certified therapist. I am a coach, but it really was after, I'm in the emergency room, I've sprained ankle, I make a decision to fix my life and change it. And I created my team. And so as I created my team, I got a therapist, I got a coach.
Right.
I looked at who I was friends with. I did all of that. And as I started to heal, I felt like I had been wearing these really like gray glasses, and I had always been a pretty positive, go lucky person, but the relationships, the last one really put a damper on how I was seeing the world. And as I started to heal, it literally felt like suddenly I had a new prescription. Like I had these glasses where now everything was rosy and pink and the smells were better and life just felt more filled with possibilities. And I just felt so good. And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought I felt good before, but now that I don't have this lead weight just bringing me down, it's so much easier to soar. It's so much easier to do these wonderful things, not having to deal with these toxic people. Oh my gosh, I have to tell everybody. I have to share this message with everybody. And so it came from that place of being so excited to let other people know that they don't have to suffer, that they don't have to stay stuck, that they can create whatever life they want at any point in their lives, no matter what they've experienced, no matter what they've been through. It is possible for them to create that change with the right support and not feeling like we have to be alone and like we have to do it ourselves. And it came from that place. And it's like the Martin Luther King said, I didn't have a dream, the dream had him. Well, that was me. It wasn't like I decided I'm going to go out and be a coach. It was, I need to share this. What's the best way of doing it? Oh, okay. I need to get certified in coaching and I need to start my own business. And I need, all those things happen because of that feeling of needing to share that and help more women and men really step into their authenticity and really the bigger picture, which sounds kind of like the hippy dippy in me, but how do I make the world a better place? Yeah. And if everybody feels better, and they feel happier and they're feeling more supported and they can really step into what they were put here on earth to be, they're going to have a lot less stressed out, angry, upset people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing what happens when you do what you're talking about and really examine and excavate yourself and why you've made the choices you've made. Because no matter what, just, if you've been in a toxic relationship or many, you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
You stepped into that. So let's examine why, not from a shame place, but the juice, the greatness is in examining what led you there, because then you got something to work with, because you can control you. It's
Yes.
you, unless you have a medical condition or something, but you have a measure of control with yourself. You can't control anybody else.
No. And the sooner we realize that, you be accepting of people. Now, accepting doesn't mean they treat us badly. We sit around and let them keep treating us badly.
Right.
But accepting is realizing, okay, this is who they are, and then making a conscious decision. I am going to stick around or not stick around, but accept that this is who they are without trying to paint them with a different brush.
Absolutely. And how amazing. I mean, we're going to be with ourselves until we die.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important friendship that you've got in your life to work on is the one that you have with yourself.
Yes.
And continue to plant those seeds. I mean, I wish, maybe there should be a dating app for dating only yourself. And the app is all about what's exciting to you in life. What adventure do you want to try? It's not about swiping left or right for some other person. It's about looking for you. And then, yes, if somebody comes in and, you're in this great place and you really, care about yourself, fantastic. Enjoy that too. But it's kind of amazing when you do get to that place of friendship with yourself, how quickly, because I've said it many times, people who behave, I don't like saying toxic people, people who behave in toxic ways exist everywhere.
Yes.
Unless you're a hermit that lives in the woods and has no contact with other human beings, you're going to bump into them.
Yep.
And how quickly, I am amazed at how quickly I can go without slamming someone, without being accusatory, without just being like, yeah, this is not going to work for me, because I care about myself.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too, I mean, so I don't have the dating app itself, but that's actually part of our curriculum is getting that choose your own adventure and create it. I mean, that's to me is the most favorite part of what we do with our clients. But I always have this vision of, we kind of have this energetic bubble around us. And so the energetic bubble is this, being in creation mode, being able to feel like we are empowered to create what's best for us and making conscious choices of who we allow into our lives. And when you have, and you're used to this bubble of just this inspiring, energetic, feel good type of bubble, when people pierce through it for whatever reason, we don't like it.
Exactly.
So if they pierce through it because they are these unhealthy people, then we're much better. And when we get really comfortable with that bubble, we're like, ugh, get out of my energy. I don't like that. I don't want to be around that. I want to keep this beautiful peace around me. But when we allow other people in, and it's not piercing, it's more of makes your bubble feel even bigger, where you feel even more inspired. Then you're like, oh, I want more of that. Give me more of that. So when you've done that inner work, you more naturally will stand up for yourself and stick up for yourself, because of the fact that you want to protect that peace that you know how hard it was to create.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, tell our listeners where they can find your podcast, where they can find out more about you and the work that you do, and where they can sign up for some much needed coaching.
Well, I would definitely suggest checking out our podcast, Toxic Love Podcasts, on iTunes and all of the different places. You can also go to our website, beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com. That'll bring you to you can click for our TikTok and our Facebook and all that. But pretty much if you look up either Stephanie McPhail or Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, you're going to find a way to get in touch with us. And I'll also share a link for the notes for a way to set up an appointment with me if anyone needs it.
Fantastic. Because, coaching is a magical thing. I've done both the intense therapy to work on my past and how those things that, behaviors that you develop to really save yourself as a child, how they then become things that keep you crippled as an adult. So that's where the therapy is important and the excavation is important. And then coaching for me is like, okay, now we're going to focus on, your wondrous now.
Yes.
And how can we make your now more wondrous? So
Yes.
I love both. I absolutely love both. So thank you so much, and your husband, for doing what you do, and especially for raising a young man that knows that if he wants to be a good human, he needs to learn how to clean a toilet.
Yes.
All right, listeners, thanks for tuning in. I love to do these kind of shows. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin and Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can ride the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.
Oh, that was awesome.